okay?
Oh, okay. Great, great.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here with David Strauss, attorney here in Fort Lauderdale. David's the second time he's actually doing a little interview with me. This time we're going to be talking strictly about commercial contracts, business contracts, and ramifications in today's difficult environment. So David, again, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Strauss. I'm with the Strauss Law Firm, practicing law for over 25 years, 10 years in New York, over 15 years here in South Florida. A small shop, a boutique firm in Fort Lauderdale. We handle matters all over the state of Florida, primarily in the Tri-County area, about Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, and Broward.
Excellent. So I'd like you to start out and talk to me about what is a contract. Now, if I remember my contract law when I was in real estate, it said that even a verbal agreement between people can be considered a contract. However, I think most of us today are a little leery about those. So just talk to us about what is a contract between, let's say, a vendor and a business, or a vendor and a customer. Because if I contracted you to build, but now none of your builders can come here, now are you in breach of contract? You know, or you were supposed to supply me with masks and now you're saying they're going to go to this other place. Are you in breach of contract? So those are the kinds of things that people need to realize, what they have, what a contract means to them and to the vendors or whatever.
Right, and depending on the nature of what's being provided, whether it's goods or and what the agreement is, a lot of contracts, and a contract, by the way, is when someone makes an offer and there's evidence that the other person accepted the offer. There's got to be consideration, a quid pro quo. Each side has to be giving up something. It could be something of value. It could be abstaining from doing something someone has a legal right to do. There has to be some kind of binding consideration. Something people misconstrue in that arena is, oh, it could be $1. No, not really, because that's a sham, and we all know that. And a lot of contracts will say for $1. And that doesn't make the contract unenforceable because $1 is a sham. Usually they'll say $1 when there's other consideration. Real estate contracts, for example, often say for consideration of $1 when the purchase price is in the hundreds of thousands. So there's consideration there. But in the context of the coronavirus and what's going on right now with a lot of businesses being shut down, unable to operate, if you have a written agreement, and it's, again, like you noted, it's not required that you have a written agreement to be enforceable unless the contract cannot be performed within 1 year. And there are other exceptions to that, statutes of frauds meant to prevent fraud that might require certain types of agreements to be in writing. But most agreements can be verbal to be enforceable. They're just a lot harder to prove. But if you have a written agreement, then there is typically going to be a clause in the agreement, especially with the example you gave me, construction, for example, and merchant contracts like providing masks. There's almost always going to be a clause about acts of God. And the fancy Latin term for that is force majeure. And you have to look to that clause because they're not all the same. And if the definition of what constitutes a force majeure or act of God is broad enough to include something such as a pandemic that caused the local economy to shut down, that might suspend both parties' performance. Or it may give either or both parties the option to terminate the agreement. So it's always good to have a lawyer look at that sort of thing. And like we were talking about earlier, I'm giving free consults to anybody right now. And that would include looking at a contract to give them my opinion of whether they can cancel due to a force majeure. And I've done quite a few of those consults already the past couple of weeks. But that would be the first place to look, is for an act of God or force majeure clause in a written contract. There's also a doctrine of common law called impossibility of performance, frustration of purpose, which are very, very closely related doctrines of law, that if someone were to sue someone for not performing right now, and the other party could say, hey, performance was impossible due to this outbreak, that might hold water in court. That depends. And that's not something that's in a contract. That's something that just results from centuries of judge-made law, where that comes from.
Okay. So again, I'm a small business and I provide, let's say I provide, I don't know, we provide merchant services. And let's say that there was an agreement. Now, we don't necessarily have one, but many companies do, and your business is closed down. Do you go ahead and close down something like that, even though you have a 3-year? I mean, what is the process from looking at, I know I got a contract with this, now what do? I can't afford to keep paying. So what is your suggestion? If I already know I can't get out of a contract, they want monthly, like your electric bills and your other bills, the place is completely closed down. There's not an employee in there. Can you tell me what the thought would be on those types of contracts where I know I've got to pay every month?
Right. And same advice in terms of looking for a clause about acts of God and force majeure. Assuming you don't have that, and with those types of contracts, you probably won't have that because they write those contracts to protect themselves, not to protect their customers.
Okay.
So those contracts that you're talking about that most small businesses have with different vendors and providers, they don't give you an out for that scenario. But my advice would be the same for any type of agreement that you might have with anybody. Call them, talk to them, see what they're willing to do. A lot of them are going to be willing to just put everything on hold for now.
Mm-hmm.
Some might not be as flexible, but they might be willing to not require payment right now and maybe give you 90 days, but then put the 90 days worth of payments that you would owe on the back end. Maybe they'll put it on the back end, but then extend the term of the agreement. And you might be okay with that. As long as you don't have to pay right now, that's all we care about is holding on to money right now so we don't have to file for bankruptcy or go out of business.
Exactly.
So I would say, always talk to those people, try to get something in writing from them, confirming whatever you might agree to. But a lot of different people are being flexible right now, like car loans, car leases. If you don't ask them, they're not going to do anything for you. They're going to send you the same bills they always send you. But if you engage with them, and it's very difficult right now because they're all inundated with phone calls. But if you're persistent and really work on this, get through when you can, everyone should be looking for flexibility for the bills that are more on the substantial side that, like a car lease or car finance contract.
Right. Okay. All right. So one of the things that you talked about at the very beginning, when we first did the real estate side, was that you talked about the new regulations that came out protecting or giving businesses the opportunity to ask for loans from the federal government. And
Yeah.
if I were a business and I was going to get stuck with some of these like 3 months worth of normal operating expenses, will this loan cover me? And would you remind people about the loan and how to get it or what you're familiar with?
Yeah. I'm sure we're talking about the CARES Act.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
That's an act of Congress. That's the same bill that's now a law that should get people who make 70,000 or 75,000 or less a year, 1,200 per person, 4,200 per household. I'm sorry, 2,400 per household. That's part of the CARES Act. Small businesses
Yes,
can
that's
apply for up to $10,000, not just for a loan, but for a forgivable loan. And the forgivable in that scenario is absolute. It's not really conditioned on anything.
wow.
So as long as you qualify, you're eligible for up to $10,000. And anyone who might be eligible should apply yesterday. Go to the website, SBA, that stands for Small Business Administration, sba.gov. And it's very user-friendly. It's very easy to apply. A friend of mine told me about it. I went and did it. It took me about 15 minutes to apply for $10,000 for my law firm. I'm okay now, but I don't know what's going to happen if we're still batting down in 90 days.
Yeah.
I might really need that funding.
Exactly.
And for larger businesses, they can qualify for up to 10 million in forgivable loans. And most aren't going to qualify for anywhere near 10 million, obviously. I'm just saying this applies to companies of all sizes on the larger side. And those are going to be forgivable if you can demonstrate that you have maintained the employees. They're going to loan you the money. The main purpose is so that you can pay your employees so they still have a job and this doesn't cause a domino effect all the way down our economy. That one, you've got to try to retain your people, or then it's not going to be a forgivable loan. I understand that even if it's not forgivable, the interest rate's very reasonable, but obviously we want to see those forgivable. We want to see employees retained. That's to look into as well. Same place you'd look for as the up to $10,000 for smaller businesses, SBA.gov.
All right, very good. Well, this is really great information. Can you please give our listeners how to reach you, David, at your law office, and set up those free consults?
That's my pleasure. The best way to reach me right now to set up those consults is by my email. My email address is David, D-A-V-I-D, at StraussLaw.net, spelled StraussLaw.net. And anyone who asks right now, I'll give them a free consult. I normally charge $250. Some people, if I can provide some, not time-intensive services, I'll donate those too to help some people for obviously more expansive work like litigation, demand letters, and reviewing heavy contracts. I'll have to charge some fees. But right now, I'm not charging anyone unless I have to.
Excellent. Well, David, thank you so much for your time. This has been really great information. I'm actually going to take this second one and send it to a few people that have been really worried about the contract side. And you're right, the government is trying to provide certain amount of buffer for us to be able to weather these days. And if we don't reach out to them, shame on us, I guess, at the long run, right?
Yeah. Thanks for having me very much, Stephanie. A real pleasure.
You're welcome. Have a great day.